The repair shop smelled like burnt metal and old oil, wiped his hands on a dirty cloth and stared at the broken navigation unit on his workbench. Another cheap part from another cheap freighter. He sighed and picked up his tools. This was his life now, fixing junk on a trading station that floated in the middle of nowhere. Had been on Station Meridian for 3 years. It orbited a planet called home to an alien species that looked almost human but with pale purple skin and no visible ears. There were peaceful traders, deeply religious and kept mostly to themselves. Didn't mind. He liked the quiet. He liked working alone. The door chimed. Looked up, expecting another customer with another broken gadget. Instead, he saw something different. A young girl stood in the doorway. She couldn't have been more than 16 in human years. Her skin was the soft purple of morning sky, and she wore simple robes that marked her as someone from the religious district. But what caught attention was how she moved. Her head tilted slightly, listening. Her hands touched the door frame carefully. She made soft clicking sounds with her tongue. She was blind. "Hello," said, setting down his tools. "Can I help you?" The girl turned toward his voice. Her eyes were clouded over, completely white. She smiled. "I heard noises, humming sounds. What are they?" Glanced around his shop. Machines hummed everywhere, power tools charging, diagnostic equipment running, a small fabricator in the corner printing metal parts. He'd stopped noticing the sounds years ago. "Just machines," he said. "This is a repair shop." The girl stepped inside, her hands trailing along the wall. She made more clicking sounds, navigating around a tool cart. "They sing different songs. That one is higher." She pointed exactly at his diagnostic scanner. "That one buzzes like angry insects." She gestured toward the fabricator. Felt his eyebrows rise. Her echolocation was incredibly precise. "You have good ears." "I have only ears," she said simply. "And touch and smell. You smell like metal and something sweet, food." Looked at his desk where he'd left half a protein bar. "Yeah, you're good at this." The girl smiled wider. "I am Lyra. I come to the station sometimes with my family. They buy medicine supplies. I get bored waiting. I fix things." He watched her explore his shop, her fingers gentle on everything she touched. "Should you be wandering around alone?" Lyra shrugged. "My family thinks I am safe. The eternal veil protects me. That is what they say." The eternal veil. Our faith, our God, the unseen divine that watches all. Lyra touched a shelf of spare parts. "I was born blind. My people believe this means I am chosen, blessed. One day I will become an oracle and speak wisdom to others." Frowned. He'd heard about religion but never paid much attention. "You don't sound excited about that." Lyra was quiet for a moment, her clicking stopped. "I am honored, it is a sacred duty, but sometimes I wonder." "Wonder what?" "What do stars look like?" The question hung in the air. Looked at the girl, this kid who would never see a sunset, never see her own reflection, never see the smile on someone's face when they laughed. And suddenly his chest felt tight. "They look like tiny lights," he said quietly, "scattered across black velvet. Some are bright, some are dim. They don't all look the same. Some are blue, some are red, some are yellow." "Colors," Lyra whispered. "Everyone talks about colors. I don't understand them. Red is warm, blue is cold, yellow is happy. How can colors be temperatures and feelings?" Smiled. "It's hard to explain. You kind of have to see it." Lyra's expression fell. Just for a second saw sadness cross her face before she hid it behind another smile. "Yes, I suppose so." She stayed for another hour. She asked about his tools, about the machines, about what he fixed. Found himself talking more than he had in months. Lyra was curious about everything. She wanted to know how ships worked, how fabricators printed metal, how humans saw differently then. When she finally left, clicking her way back into the corridor, sat in his empty shop and thought. He thought about blindness, about faith, about a girl who would spend her life speaking wisdom about things she'd never seen. Lyra came back 3 days later, then 5 days after that. Each time she stayed a little longer. She told about her family. Her father was a merchant. Her mother was gentle but strict. She told him about oracle training, about meditation chambers and sacred texts read aloud by priestesses. She told him she was scared. Scared of what? Asked. Scared I will disappoint the eternal veil. Scared I am not holy enough. Scared I want things I should not want. Like what? Lyra was quiet. Then, I want to see my father's face, just once. That night couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling of his small quarters and thought about neural technology. Humans had been experimenting with sensory prosthetics for decades. Cochlear implants, synthetic eyes, neural bridges that connected machine input directly to the brain. He'd studied biomedical engineering before switching to mechanical work. He knew the theory. Could he do it? Could he build something that would let a blind alien see? It would be difficult. Brains were similar to human brains but not identical. He'd need to map her neural pathways, calibrate sensors to her specific biology, create software that could translate visual input into signals her brain could understand. It would take weeks, maybe months. But he could try. The next time Lyra visited, made his offer. What if I told you I might be able to help you see? Lyra went very still. What do you mean? I'm an engineer. I know about medical technology. I could build you a device, a visor. It would go across your eyes and send signals to your brain. You'd have to train your brain to understand the signals, but eventually, you might be able to see. Lyra's hands trembled. That is not possible. It's possible, difficult but possible. Would it hurt? No, it would be strange at first. Overwhelming maybe, but not painful. Lyra stood frozen, could see her breathing fast. My family would never allow it. The priestesses would call it blasphemy. I am chosen. I am meant to be blind. Then we don't tell them, said. Not yet. Let me build it first. You can decide later if you want to use it. Why would you do this? Thought about that. Why would he? He barely knew this girl. It wasn't his problem. It wasn't his culture. But when he looked at Lyra, he saw someone trapped by circumstances she didn't choose. He saw someone curious and smart who deserved a chance. Because I can, he said. Because you want to see stars. Because maybe the eternal veil won't mind as much as everyone thinks. Lyra smiled, not her usual polite smile, a real one full of hope and fear and desperate wanting. Yes, she whispered. Yes, please help me see. Nodded. He didn't know it then, but with that simple agreement, he just set in motion events that would shake an entire civilization. All he knew was that a blind girl wanted to see the stars, and he was going to help her. He started gathering parts the next day. The visor took 6 weeks to build, worked on it every night after closing his shop, hunched over his workbench with tools that weren't designed for such delicate work. He ordered parts from 3 different suppliers so nobody would guess what he was making. Neural sensors from a medical company, flexible circuitry from a robotics dealer, a thin titanium frame from a jewelry fabricator. Lyra visited almost every day. She couldn't help with the technical work, but she let run scans of her brain patterns. He mapped her neural pathways, comparing them to human models, adjusting his designs. She sat still for hours while sensors pressed against her temples, feeding data to his computers. Does it hurt? She asked during one session. The visor, no, the scanning. Everything change, going against what I am supposed to be. Paused his work. Do you want to stop? Lyra shook her head quickly. No, but I am afraid. What if I see and it changes me? What if I am not meant to see? Then you take it off, said. It's your choice, always your choice. Minyu found out during the 4th week. His friend had stopped by the shop unannounced and saw the visor parts spread across the workbench. Minyu was an exobiologist studying culture on a research grant. He took one look at the neural sensors and went pale. "Please tell me you're not building what I think you're building," Minyu said. Kept working. "I'm helping someone." "You're helping someone violate sacred law. The don't fix blindness in the chosen. It's fundamental to their religion. You know this, right?" "I know a girl who wants to see." Minyu sat down hard on a stool. This could cause serious problems, diplomatic problems. The priestesses have enormous power. If they think humans are interfering with their sacred traditions, then maybe their traditions need interfering with. That's not our call to make. Set down his soldering iron and looked at his friend. A 16-year-old kid is going to spend her entire life locked in a temple speaking prophecies about a world she's never seen. She'll never have a choice about her own life. And you're telling me I should just accept that because it's tradition? Minyu rubbed his face. "I'm telling you to think about consequences. This isn't just about Lyra. This could affect human relations. It could hurt people. Or it could help them. How many other blind are out there? How many want to see but can't because of religious rules? That's their culture to change, not ours." Picked up his tools again. "I'm not changing their culture. I'm giving one person a choice." Minyu left looking worried. But he didn't report. He didn't try to stop him. He just said, "Be careful, please." The visor was finished on a Tuesday. It looked like a sleek band of dark metal that would curve around Lyra's head, covering her eyes. Tiny sensors studded the inside. A small processor sat behind the right temple. The whole thing was light, barely heavier than a pair of sunglasses. Held it in his hands and felt terrified. What if it didn't work? What if it worked wrong? What if he damaged her brain somehow? He'd tested it 100 times on simulation software, but this was real. This was someone's life. Lyra came to the shop that evening after the station's main lights had dimmed to night cycle. She'd told her family she was attending evening prayers. She was shaking when she arrived. "Is it ready?" she asked. Nodded. He couldn't speak. They sat together in the back room, explained one more time how it would work. The visor would detect electromagnetic radiation, light, and convert it into neural impulses. Her brain would have to learn to interpret those impulses. At first, it might just be chaos, flashes, confusion, but gradually her brain should adapt. "Should," Lyra repeated. "I think it will work. I'm not certain. We can stop any time." Lyra took a breath. "No, I want this. Show me." Placed the visor on her head carefully. It settled across her clouded eyes, the sensors making contact with her skin. He activated the power cell. A soft blue light glowed on the processor. "Starting neural connection," said. His hands were sweating. "This might feel strange." Lyra gasped. Her whole body went rigid. "Lyra, talk to me. What's happening?" I don't. There's something. It's not sound, it's not touch, is this?" "What do you see?" "I don't know. Flashes, bright things, dark things, everything is moving." Her hands clutched at the arms of her chair. Adjusted the sensitivity, lowering the input. "Too much, better, worse." Wait, something is. There are shapes, is that right, shapes?" Yes, those are shapes. You're seeing the room, can you see me?" Lyra turned her head toward him, her mouth opened. No sound came out. Waved his hand slowly in front of her face. "Do you see this?" "It's moving, the shape is moving, that's you." "That's my hand." Lyra made a sound between a laugh and a sob. Her own hands came up and she stared at them, watched her learn to see in real time. She turned her hands over, watching her fingers move. She touched her face, watching her hand approach. "I can see me," she whispered. "I can see my hand, my skin. It's what color?" "Purple, light purple." "Purple," she said the word like a prayer. Stood up and moved to the viewport. Outside, Station Meridian floated against a backdrop of stars. The planet hung below, a blue-green sphere wrapped in clouds. "Come here. I want to show you something." Lyra stood shakily. She was learning to walk while seeing, and it was clearly overwhelming. She bumped into a table, gasped at seeing it before touching it, then laughed. She made her way to the viewport and looked out. Then she went completely silent. Watched her face. He watched tears start flowing down her cheeks. Her hands pressed against the transparent aluminum, reaching toward infinity. Stars, she breathed. Those are stars, and that's my world, that's. Yes. It's beautiful, everything is so beautiful. Her voice broke. Why did no one tell me? Why did no one tell me it was this beautiful? How could they? Words aren't enough. Lyra stood at that viewport for an hour. She looked at stars. She looked at her planet. She looked at the station around them, at passing ships, at the lights of other docking bays. She looked at her hands again, at space. She stared at his eyes. Is this what everyone sees all the time? She asked. More or less. How do you do anything else? How do you not just stare at everything forever? Smiled, you get used to it. I don't think I ever will. Lyra touched the visor. Can I keep it, please? It's yours, but Lyra, you need to be careful if your family sees. I know, I'll hide it. I'll wear it like a headband. They won't know. She looked at him, her eyes still clouded but somehow more alive than ever. Thank you for this gift. Thank you for showing me truth. That word, truth, would come back to haunt them. Lyra left late that night, the visor disguised as a ceremonial band. She promised to practice, to let her brain adjust slowly. Watched her go and felt proud. He'd done something good. He'd helped someone. He had no idea what was coming. 3 days later, Lyra returned to the shop in tears. Something is wrong, she said. The visor, is it malfunctioning? No, not the visor, everything else. She sat down, her whole body trembling. I've been watching everything, learning to see. And so many things they told me about the world are wrong. The sacred flame in the temple, they said it burns with divine light that never goes out. But I looked at it, really looked. I can see the fuel lines, it's just technology. The eternal veil's eye in the sky, the comet that appears every year, it's just ice and rock. I can see it through the visor's enhanced sensors. Not divine, just science. Felt his stomach drop. Lyra. How much of my faith is built on things that aren't real? How much is just stories? That doesn't mean your faith is false. It just means the explanations are wrong. But they told me I was chosen because I couldn't see physical things. They said I would see spiritual truth. But what if? What if there's no spiritual truth to see? What if everything is just atoms and energy and natural laws? Didn't know what to say. He'd given her sight. He hadn't meant to take away her faith. Outside the shop, someone was watching. A figure in white robes stood in the corridor, having followed Lyra from the temple. High Priestess had sensed something wrong with the girl. The chosen one had been acting strange, distracted, asking dangerous questions. Now watched through the window as Lyra held her head in her hands, talking about truth and science, while a human sat beside her. The priestess's eyes narrowed. She turned and walked away, her mind already planning. This corruption would be stopped. The chosen one would be saved, and the human who had poisoned her would face justice. The war between faith and truth was about to begin. High Priestess arrived at the station with 12 temple guards and a formal demand. She wanted to see Lyra immediately. The message reached Lyra's family first, and within an hour, they'd brought the girl to the station's diplomatic hall, a neutral meeting place where disputes between species were handled. Wasn't invited, but Minyu was there as a cultural observer, and he sent urgent messages about what was happening. They know something is wrong. The priestess keeps staring at Lyra. She's asking why the girl has been avoiding temple duties. Paced his shop, his heart pounding. He'd told Lyra to be careful, but he'd also told her the visor was hers to keep, her choice. Now that choice was about to blow up in both their faces. The next message from Minyu was just 2 words: get here. Ran, he arrived at the diplomatic hall to find a crowd gathered outside. Citizens in robes. human merchants and workers, station security looking nervous. Through the transparent doors could see the meeting room. Lyra stood in the center. Priestess faced her, white robe spotless, her expression cold. Lyra's parents stood to the side, looking confused and frightened. And there at the back was Ambassador Jinnah, the senior human diplomat on the station. She looked furious. Pushed through the crowd and slipped inside just as spoke. "You have been chosen by the eternal veil," the priestess said. "Yet you disrespect this blessing. You ask questions that show doubt. You spend time with outsiders instead of preparing for your sacred duties. Explain yourself, child." Lyra's hands trembled. She wore the visor but styled as a headband like always. To most observers it just looked decorative, but soft eyes fix on it. "I have been learning," Lyra said quietly, "learning about the world. The world of matter is not your concern. You are meant for higher things. What if matter and spirit aren't separate? What if understanding one helps understand the other?" Gasps from the observers. Even Lyra's father looked shocked. Such questions were borderline heretical. Stepped closer. "What has poisoned your mind? Who has taught you to question divine wisdom?" Lyra looked at. Just for a second their eyes met. Then she straightened her shoulders and made her choice. "I have been taught to see," she said. She reached up and removed the headband. Without its disguise, the visor was obvious, metal and sensors and tiny lights. She held it up for everyone to see. "This is a human device. It gives me sight. For the first time in my life I can see colors, stars, faces, the world that everyone else sees. And through seeing I have learned that many things we call divine are simply natural. The sacred flame runs on fuel. The eternal eye is a comet following orbital mechanics. The visions that oracles have in meditation chambers. I've seen the incense used. I've read human studies on how certain chemicals cause hallucinations." The room erupted, shouted, some in anger, some in shock. Face went white, then red. "Blasphemy!" The priestess's voice cut through the noise. "You dare use corrupted technology. You dare mock the sacred mysteries." "I'm not mocking anything. I'm just saying we should understand how things actually work. The chosen are not meant to see. Your blindness was a gift, a mark of spiritual favor." "My blindness was genetics." Lyra's voice rose. "I read the medical files. I have a mutation in my optical development genes. It's not divine, it's biology." Stepped forward. Lyra's father had been silent until now, but his face showed something between pain and wonder. "You can see?" he asked his daughter. "Truly see?" Lyra turned to him, tears streaming. "Yes, father, I can see you, your face, you're beautiful." His own eyes filled. He reached out, touching her cheek. "Show me," he whispered. "How does it work?" Moved fast. She grabbed Lyra's arm, trying to take the visor. "This abomination will be destroyed." That's when stepped forward. "Don't touch her." Everyone turned to look at the human, lip curled. You built this thing." "I built a medical device. She asked for help, I helped." "You have violated our sacred laws." "I've violated nothing. I'm not. Your laws don't apply to me." Ambassador Jinnah moved to his side. She looked tired but determined. "He's right, priestess. Under Galactic Treaty, humans are not bound by religious law, and Lyra is above the age of medical consent under both human and standards. She had the right to accept treatment." "Treatment?" His voice dripped with disgust. "This is not treatment. This is corruption of the sacred." "This is optional technology," Jinnah said firmly, "which you are free to refuse, but you cannot force others to refuse it." The argument spiraled. More people arrived, other priestesses, government officials, human observers. The meeting moved to a larger council chamber, and as it did, the news spread. Within hours, everyone on the station knew about Lyra and the visor. Within a day, the news had reached the planet below. Within 2 days, society was fracturing. Traditionalists were outraged. They called Lyra a fallen chosen. Protests erupted at human businesses on. Religious leaders gave sermons about the dangers of foreign influence. Some called for humans to be expelled from space entirely. But others reacted differently. Parents of blind children came forward, quietly asking if the technology could help their kids. Young questioned why ancient traditions should override personal choice. Scientists and scholars pointed out that religious doctrine and physical reality didn't have to be enemies. The progressives found their voice in an unexpected place: Lyra's father. He appeared on communication networks and spoke simply. "I love my daughter, I always have, but I have spent 16 years watching her navigate a world she couldn't see, knowing she would spend her life speaking wisdom about beauty she'd never witness. When she told me she could see my face, when she described what I looked like," his voice broke. "That is not corruption, that is miracle. And if faith cannot accept miracles that come through science, then perhaps we need to reconsider what faith means." His words resonated. Suddenly, families who'd stayed quiet began speaking up. The divide grew wider. The government, caught between religious authority and growing public pressure, issued an ultimatum, and Lyra were to appear before the High Council, would explain his actions. Lyra would choose: remove the visor and return to temple training, or face exile from her people. The hearing was set for 1 week away. Spent those days in his shop, feeling the weight of what he'd done. Minyu visited often, bringing food and news. The station was tense, and humans who'd lived peacefully for years now eyed each other with suspicion. "There are talks of trade sanctions," Minyu said. "Some human ships have been docking at ports. This is escalating." "I just wanted to help her see," said quietly. "I know, but good intentions don't prevent consequences." Lyra came to the shop the night before the hearing. She'd been staying in protective custody at the human embassy, but Ambassador Jinnah had allowed her one visit. She sat across from, the visor still on her head. "I'm not going to take it off," she said. "No matter what they demand, I'm not going back to blindness." "They might exile you." "Then I'll live in exile. You gave me a gift, not just sight, choice. Before, my entire life was decided: become an oracle, speak prophecies, never question, never choose. Now I can choose. Your people are fighting because of that choice. Maybe they need to fight. Maybe this conversation should have happened a long time ago." She looked at her hands, watching her fingers move. "Do you know what the hardest part is? Not the politics, not the anger. It's realizing how much I didn't know. How much everyone told me was divine that was just explainable. I feel lost." "Lost how?" "I still believe in something greater. I still feel there's meaning to existence. But I can't believe the old stories anymore. So what do I believe?" "Thought about that? Maybe you believe in truth, in asking questions, in understanding the universe as it really is. That seems pretty sacred to me." Lyra smiled sadly. "That's very human of you. You're living in a complicated place now, between tradition and progress, between faith and fact. It's uncomfortable." "Yes, but it's real, and real is better than comfortable lies." The next day they stood before the High Council of. The chamber was huge, filled with officials and observers from both species. Priestess sat with other religious leaders. Ambassador Jinnah sat with the human delegation, and in the center, and Lyra waited. The chief counselor, an old named, spoke first. "We are here to address a matter that has divided our people. The human-created technology that gives sight to the blind. The chosen one Lyra accepted this technology against sacred tradition. We must decide if this act was compassion or corruption." For hours they debated, argued that blindness in the chosen was sacred, that removing it was attacking the foundations of faith. Argued that he'd simply provided a medical option, that forcing someone to stay blind against their will was cruelty. Argued that faith should not require suffering. Other voices joined: scholars, parents, priests, scientists. The chamber was evenly split. There was no clear answer. Finally raised his hand for silence. "This council cannot decide what is sacred. That is between each and the divine, but we can decide what is legal. And legally, we must address this. Should humans be allowed to provide this technology to citizens? Before he could continue, alarms blared. Station security burst into the chamber. "Counselor, we have a situation." On the screens, images appeared. A warship had fired on a human medical vessel in orbit. The vessel had been carrying supplies, including optical prosthetics. Traditionalist militants had deemed it corruption cargo and attacked. The human ship was damaged but not destroyed, but 3 crew members were injured. Ambassador Jinna stood slowly, her face grim. "This is an act of war." The room erupted into chaos, and realized with sickening clarity that his act of compassion had sparked something much larger than he'd ever imagined. The war between faith and truth wasn't just ideological anymore. It was about to become very, very real. The attack on the medical ship changed everything overnight. What had been a cultural disagreement became a diplomatic crisis. Human military vessels moved into defensive positions around Station Meridian. Warships gathered near their planet. Both sides claimed they wanted peace, but both sides prepared for war. Ambassador Jinna called an emergency meeting in her office. Lyra, Minu, and several other key figures crowded into the small space. Through the window, they could see human destroyers patrolling, their weapons systems active. "The government is demanding you both be handed over," Jinna said, looking at Lyra. "They say you'll face trial on for violating sacred law." "And if we refuse?" asked. "Then we're protecting criminals, according to them. It gives justification for more aggressive action." Lyra shook her head. "I won't go back. They'll force me to remove the visor. They'll lock me in a temple for the rest of my life." "I know," Jinna rubbed her temples, "which is why I've already refused their demand. You're under human protection now, both of you." "That could start a war," Minu said quietly. "A war has already started. It just hasn't turned fully violent yet." Jinna pulled up reports on her screen. "Riots on, traditionalists attacking progressive communities. 3 deaths so far. Humans are being targeted. Our embassy there is under siege." "Felt sick. This is my fault." "No," Lyra said firmly. "This is my people's fault for building a society on forced suffering. This was always going to happen eventually. You just became the spark." Jinna looked at them both. "There might be a way to de-escalate. Priestess has proposed something. A public trial. Not a legal trial, a theological one. She wants to debate Lyra in front of everyone. If Lyra can prove the Eternal Veil's teachings are false, the religious order will accept reform. If she can't, she must renounce her sight and return to the faith." "That's insane," Minu said. "How do you prove or disprove faith?" "You don't," Jinna agreed. "Which is why it's a trap, but it might be our only option. The government is willing to broker a ceasefire if this trial happens. It gives both sides time to cool down." Looked at Lyra. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." Lyra's voice was steady. "If there's any chance to end this peacefully, I have to try. Besides," she smiled slightly, "I'm not afraid of any more. I've seen truth. She only has stories." "Stories are powerful," Minu warned. "People die for stories." "Then maybe it's time for better stories." The trial was scheduled for 5 days later on itself, in the grand amphitheater where religious ceremonies were held. The entire event would be broadcast across networks and human channels. Millions would watch. Those 5 days were tense. More skirmishes broke out. An extremist tried to board Station Meridian with explosives. Human traders on were attacked. The body count rose to 7, then 12, then 18. Spent his time helping Lyra prepare. She'd asked him to come with her too, to stand beside her during the trial. Jinna had agreed, though she'd assigned 6 security guards to protect them both. "What will you say?" asked as they practiced in an empty conference room. "The truth, that faith and knowledge aren't enemies. That understanding how the universe works doesn't diminish wonder, it increases it. That forcing people to suffer in the name of tradition is wrong. We'll say you've abandoned the sacred, that you've chosen human corruption over divine wisdom. And I'll say I chose to see, that's all, just to see. Lyra looked at him. Is that so terrible? No, but they'll make it sound terrible. Mean you helped too. He provided historical context about religion, explaining which arguments might resonate with traditional believers. He coached Lyra on speaking style, on how to address the priestesses respectfully while still challenging their ideas. Don't attack faith itself, he advised. Attack the specific claims that are demonstrably false. The sacred flame runs on fuel, that's fact. But whether the divine exists, leave that open. Let people keep their belief in something greater while accepting physical reality. On the day before departure, his shop received an unexpected visitor. Lyra's father arrived looking exhausted. I wanted to thank you, he said before everything happens tomorrow. Thank me, your world is tearing itself apart. Yes, but my daughter can see. Do you know what that means to me? I've watched her for 16 years, touching things to understand them, never seeing color or light, and now she describes sunsets to me. She tells me what my own face looks like. His voice broke. Whatever happens tomorrow, you gave her that. You gave her choice. That matters. Didn't know what to say, he just nodded. There are many of us, continued. Progressives, we're organizing. If the trial goes badly, if they try to force her back into blindness, we'll resist, peacefully if possible, but we'll resist. That could get you killed. Some things are worth dying for. My daughter's freedom is one of them. The next morning they took a shuttle down too. The descent was tense. 2 fighters escorted them, weapons locked but not fired. Watched the planet grow larger through the viewport. It really was beautiful. Blue oceans, green landmasses, white clouds. Lyra had been born here, had lived her whole life here, and never seen it until gave her the visor. They landed at a secure pad near the amphitheater. Crowds lined the streets. Some held signs supporting Lyra, others held signs condemning her. Security forces kept them separated, but barely. Inside the amphitheater, thousands gathered. The space was circular, tiered seating rising up on all sides. At the center was a raised platform where Lyra and Priestess would stand. Human observers sat in one section, traditionalists in another, progressives in a third. Everyone else scattered throughout. Sat with the human delegation, but Lyra had asked him to be ready to join her if needed. He could see her on the platform, small and alone, facing cold certainty. The trial began. A senior counselor explained the terms, would present the case for tradition. Lyra would present the case for change. Both would answer questions. At the end, the council would not judge who was right. That was impossible, but they would gauge public response and recommend policy. Spoke first. Her voice rang through the amphitheater. The eternal veil chose certain individuals to be born without sight. This is not cruelty, it is blessing. These chosen ones see beyond the physical world. They perceive spiritual truths that others miss. For thousands of years, our oracles have guided us, and now this child rejects that guidance. She embraces foreign technology. She claims our sacred mysteries are merely science. She chooses human corruption over divine wisdom. The traditionalist section erupted in approval. Continued. If we allow this, what becomes of our faith? If every tradition can be discarded for convenience, what are we? The eternal veil demands sacrifice, demands discipline, demands that we trust in things beyond understanding. This child's rebellion threatens everything we hold sacred. When finished, the amphitheater buzzed with debate. Then it was Lyra's turn. She stood slowly, could see her hands shaking, but her voice was clear. I don't reject faith, I reject lies. The sacred flame is not divine, it runs on fuel. I've seen the pipes. The eternal eye is not a divine messenger, it's a comet following physics. I've tracked its orbit. The visions in meditation chambers are not messages from the veil, They're caused by incense that contains psychoactive compounds. I've read the chemical analysis. Gasps from the crowd. Some traditionalists looked outraged, others looked shaken. But here's what I've learned from seeing, Lyra continued. The universe is more wonderful than any story we told about it. Stars aren't just lights in the sky. They're massive fusion reactions billions of miles away. Life isn't just a divine gift. It's chemistry becoming so complex it became self-aware. The fact that my father's face is the result of millions of years of evolution doesn't make it less beautiful. It makes it more beautiful. She turned to address directly. You say I've chosen human corruption, but humans taught me to ask questions, to test claims, to seek understanding. Is that corruption? Or is that the most sacred thing we can do, to try to understand the universe as it really is? You've abandoned humility, shot back. You think you can understand everything with your machines and measurements. No, I know I can't understand everything, but I can understand some things, and I refuse to call my ignorance wisdom. The debate intensified. Counselors asked questions, defended the necessity of sacred mystery. Lyra defended the value of knowledge. Neither side gave ground. Then played her final card. Remove the visor, she demanded. Right now, prove your faith matters more than your sight. Choose the sacred over the profane. The amphitheater went silent. Everyone waited. Lyra's hand went to the visor. His heart stopped. Was she actually going to do it? Then Lyra spoke, her voice soft but clear. No. Then you admit you value human technology over the eternal veil. I admit I value truth over comfortable lies. I value choice over forced suffering. I value my ability to see my father's face over your need to control me. Lyra's voice grew stronger. You want me to choose between faith and sight, but that's a false choice. I can have both. I can believe in something greater while also understanding how nature works. And if your version of faith can't accept that, then maybe your version of faith is too small. The crowd erupted, half in fury, half in cheers. Security moved to restore order. That's when the old priestess stood up. Her name was Sara. She'd served the temples for 80 years. She'd been blind since birth. She'd trained countless oracles, and now she walked slowly down to the platform, her hands guided by attendants. I have a question, Sora said. Her voice was ancient but strong. Child, you say this device gives sight. Yes, honored one, Lyra said respectfully. Could it give sight to me? Looked horrified. Sara, no, you are our most revered oracle. Which is why my voice matters. Sara turned toward where his voice came from. I have served the eternal veil faithfully for 8 decades. I have given prophecies. I have mediated disputes. I have guided the faithful, and through all of it I wondered. Her voice caught. I wondered what the sky looked like. The amphitheater was dead silent. If faith requires me to never know, Sara continued, then so be it. I have accepted that, but if there is a chance, if there is a choice, she turned toward Lyra. Please, may an old woman see the stars just once before she dies. Stood up without thinking. He walked down to the platform. Ambassador Jinnah tried to stop him, but he was already moving. He reached Lyra and spoke softly. The visor won't work for her. Her neural patterns are different, but I can adjust it. It'll take a few minutes. He took the visor from Lyra and began modifying the settings, his hands moving on pure instinct. The entire amphitheater watched him work, stood frozen, unable to stop what was happening without looking like she was preventing an old priestess's dying wish. 10 minutes later, placed the modified visor on Sora's head. He activated it. The old priestess gasped. And then she wept. Through her tears, Sora looked around. At the amphitheater, at the crowd, at the sky through the open dome above, at her own hands withered with age but now visible, at his face, at Lyra's face, at the planet beyond. Beautiful, she whispered. It's all so beautiful. Why did no one tell me? Then Sora did something no one expected. She removed the visor carefully and handed it back to Lyra. I have seen enough, she said. I have seen enough to know that this gift is not corruption. It is mercy, and mercy is always sacred. She turned to address the crowd. I have served the eternal veil my entire life, and now I declare, if the divine is real, it would celebrate this. It would celebrate knowledge and compassion and the human who gave a blind child sight. Our faith must be large enough to contain truth. If it isn't, then we must make it larger. The amphitheater exploded into noise. Half the religious order looked stunned. The other half looked like their world had just shattered. The progressives cheered. The traditionalists shouted. And in the center of it all, one old priestess stood with tears on her face, having seen the stars for the first time at the end of her life. Tried to salvage the situation, tried to argue, but her voice was lost in the chaos. The trial had not ended in victory for either side. It had ended in something much more powerful, a moment of shared wonder that transcended argument. And as watched Lyra comfort the weeping priestess, he realized that maybe, just maybe, they'd found a way through after all. But the war wasn't over yet. It had just changed into something more complicated than either side expected. The moment Sora declared that mercy was sacred, the trial effectively ended. The council couldn't continue after the most respected oracle in history had sided with progress. But that didn't mean the conflict was over. If anything, it became more complicated. The amphitheater emptied slowly. Security forces had to separate groups of traditionalists and progressives who were arguing, sometimes violently. Lyra and Sora were escorted to a secure building inside the temple complex. Ambassador Jinnah and her security team came with them. Outside, the sounds of a society tearing itself apart echoed through the streets. Sora sat in a simple chair, the visor resting in her lap. She ran her fingers over it gently. I gave it back, she said to Lyra. I saw what I needed to see. You could keep it, Lyra offered. I can ask to make another one for me. The old priestess shook her head. No, child. I lived 80 years in darkness. I made peace with it. I built a life around it. That one glimpse of stars was enough, more than enough, but you have your whole life ahead of you. You should see it all. Through the window, they watched smoke rise from several districts. Minu checked his communication device constantly, reading reports. The violence is spreading. Traditionalists are destroying anything they consider corrupted by human influence. Medical clinics, scientific research centers, even some schools. And the progressives, Jinnah asked. Defending themselves, has organized protection groups. They're not attacking, but they're not backing down either. Minu looked grim. This could become civil war. Felt the weight of it crushing him. I just wanted to help one person. You did help one person, Sora said softly. And through helping her, you forced all of us to confront questions we'd been avoiding for centuries. That was always going to be painful. A knock at the door. Security checked, then allowed someone in. It was Counselor, the senior government official who'd overseen the trial. He looked exhausted. The government is collapsing, he said without preamble. Half the council is traditionalist, half is progressive. We can't agree on anything. The military is split. Some commanders want to expel all humans. Others want to protect progressives from religious extremists. What do you need from us? Jinnah asked. A solution, any solution, because right now we're headed toward disaster. Looked at Lyra. The progressives are rallying around you. They're calling you a symbol of freedom. The traditionalists are calling you a heretic who must be stopped. You've become the center of our civil war. Lyra's face went pale. I don't want that. But you have it, turned to. And you, humans have been in our space for 30 years. We've had peace, trade, cultural exchange. Now half my people want you gone and half want you to save us. How did we get here? You got here, Sora said quietly, because we built our faith on convenient lies. Because we told ourselves that suffering was holy rather than admitting we didn't know how to fix it. Because we made ignorance into virtue. She looked at. This human didn't break us. We were already broken. He just showed us the cracks." Silence fell over the room. Outside, the sounds of conflict continued. Stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the beautiful alien city, now marked by smoke and violence. He thought about his little repair shop on Station Meridian. He thought about Lyra walking in, curious and blind, asking about the humming machines. He thought about how simple it had seemed then. "I have an idea," he said slowly. "It's risky. It might not work, but it's better than civil war." Everyone turned to look at him. "The problem isn't the visor technology," continued. "It's about choice and control. Traditionalists feel like their way of life is being attacked. Progressives feel like they're being forced to suffer. Both sides are scared. So what if we give everyone what they want?" "That's impossible," said. "They want opposite things." "Not exactly. Look, traditionalists want the right to maintain their beliefs, to choose blindness for spiritual reasons if they want. Fine. Let them. Make it completely optional. No judgment, no pressure. If someone wants to refuse the visor for religious reasons, that's their sacred right." "And progressives?" Jenna asked. "They want access to the technology. They want choice. So give them that too. Make the visor available to anyone who wants it. Free choice in both directions." Minyu frowned. "That's basically what Lyra's been arguing for. The traditionalists won't accept it." "They might," Sora said thoughtfully, "if we frame it correctly. Not as abandoning faith, but as honoring individual conscience. Our religion has always taught that each person's relationship with the eternal veil is personal. We've just forgotten that when it comes to the chosen ones." Shook his head. "And the will never agree. They see the visor as corrupting. They want it banned entirely." "Then they'll lose," Lyra said quietly. "Because I'm not giving mine up, and neither will the others who want to see. You can't put this back in the box. The choice has been offered. People will take it." "Which leads to civil war," said desperately. "Unless," said, "we can get someone the respect to support the compromise. Someone whose faith is unquestionable. Someone who's already seen the truth but chosen to stay blind for personal reasons." Everyone looked at Sora. The old priestess was quiet for a long time, then she smiled. "You want me to be a bridge, to show that faith and choice can coexist." "Would you do it?" asked. Sora stood slowly, her movements careful in the room she couldn't see. "I've served the eternal veil for 80 years. I've meditated, I've prayed, I've sought wisdom in darkness. And today I saw light, beautiful, glorious light, and then I chose darkness again. Not because I reject the light, but because darkness is my home, my practice, my path." She turned toward where his voice had come from. "Yes, I will be your bridge. I will show that both choices can be sacred." The plan came together quickly. Sora would address the people. She would explain her choice, that she'd seen the stars and chosen to return to blindness, not from fear or obligation, but from personal faith. She would argue that both paths could be holy, that forcing uniformity was the true heresy. The broadcast went live 3 hours later. Sora spoke from the temple, sitting in a meditation chamber that every recognized. Her voice was calm, certain, and filled with authority. "My children," she began, "I am Sora, Oracle of the Eternal Veil. Today I did something our tradition forbids. I used human technology to see. For the first time in 80 years I saw light, I saw color, I saw faces and stars and the beautiful world the veil created." She paused. "And then I took the device off. I returned to darkness, by choice." The camera showed her sitting peacefully, her clouded eyes reflecting lights she could no longer see. Some will ask, why refuse such a gift? Why choose blindness? The answer is simple. Blindness is my spiritual practice. It is how I learned to listen deeply, to sense truth beyond sight, to find the divine in silence and shadow. That is my path, but it does not have to be everyone's path. She leaned forward, her voice growing stronger. "For too long, we have told the blind they had no choice. We made sacred what was actually suffering. We called prison a temple, but the divine does not require our pain. The divine celebrates our freedom to seek truth in our own way. Young Lyra chose to see. I chose to remain blind. Both choices can be sacred. Both can serve the eternal veil. The question is not whether we see or don't see. The question is whether we choose our path freely or have it forced upon us. The broadcast showed footage of Lyra next, speaking about her journey. Then, explaining the technology in simple terms, emphasizing that it was optional, reversible, and available to anyone regardless of their choice. Spoke about his daughter. Other parents of blind children spoke about hope. Progressive religious leaders spoke about expanding faith rather than limiting it. Even a few traditionalists spoke, saying they would refuse the technology but respected others' right to accept it. The broadcast ended with a joint statement from the government and the human embassy. The Visor technology would be made freely available to any blind who wanted it. Religious institutions would be prohibited from punishing anyone for their choice. Both seeing and not seeing would be considered valid spiritual paths. It wasn't a perfect solution, and other traditionalists rejected it entirely. Protests continued in some regions. 3 more people died in scattered violence, but slowly, gradually, the momentum shifted. Blind began coming forward to request the visor. Some wanted to see permanently. Others, inspired by Sora, wanted to experience sight once then return to their spiritual practice. A few tried it and found it too overwhelming, choosing blindness for practical rather than religious reasons. Each choice was respected. Returned to Station Meridian 2 weeks later. His shop was exactly as he'd left it, covered in dust and filled with broken equipment waiting for repair. He stood in the doorway and felt the weight of everything that had happened. "Mean you found him there? You all right?" "I don't know. 23 people died because I built a visor for a blind girl. 23 people died because a society was built on forced suffering and couldn't handle being challenged." Minyu put a hand on his friend's shoulder. "You gave someone sight. Everything else, the politics, the violence, the change, that was already there. You just became the catalyst. Does that make it better?" "I don't know. Does it matter? What matters is what happens next." What happened next surprised everyone. Scientists began working with human engineers to improve the visor technology. The collaboration became a bridge between species. Research stations opened where both cultures worked together. The religious order reformed, splitting into traditional and progressive branches that coexisted, sometimes peacefully, sometimes tensely, but without the violence. Lyra became something unexpected, not an oracle but an ambassador. She traveled between human and communities, speaking about choice, faith, and the courage to question. She wore her visor openly, a symbol of transformation. 3 months after the trial, Lyra returned to Station Meridian. She found in his shop, working on a navigation computer. She watched him for a moment, then smiled. "I've been offered a position," she said. "Cultural liaison between humans and official government job. They want someone who understands both worlds." "That's amazing," said. "Are you going to take it?" "I already did, which means I'll be based here on the station." She sat on his workbench. "I need your help with something." "Another visor?" "No, something bigger. There are dozens of blind who want the technology but can't afford the modifications. I want to start a program. Free visors for anyone who needs them, but I need an engineer." Set down his tools. "That's a huge project." "I know, that's why I need the human who started all this, the one who helped a blind girl see stars." Lyra smiled. "Will you help me?" Thought about his quiet life, his simple shop, his days of fixing broken machines. Then he thought about Lyra that first day, clicking her way through his door, asking about the humming sounds. He thought about Sora crying as she saw the sky. He thought about seeing his daughter's eyes open for the first time. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I'll help." 6 months later, the station's medical wing had a new department. The Site Project, they called it, worked there half his time, building and modifying visors. Lyra managed the program, coordinating with families and medical professionals. Minyu helped too, studying the long-term effects and publishing papers about cultural transformation. Sora visited once. She walked through the department, listening to the sounds of machines, of engineers working, of blind children seeing for the first time. She smiled. "You know what the greatest gift is?" she asked. "Not sight or blindness, choice. You gave my people choice. That's the most human thing I can imagine." "Is that good or bad?" asked. "It's both. It's complicated. It's real." Sora touched his arm. "But it's better than the comfortable lies we lived before." 1 year after building the first visor, stood at the viewport in his shop. Lyra stood beside him. Outside, the stars shone against the infinite black. A medical ship docked at the station, carrying families who traveled to get visors for their blind children. A human research vessel departed, heading to collaborate on new projects. "Do you ever regret it?" Lyra asked, "starting all this?" Considered the question. He thought about the violence, the deaths, the crisis, but he also thought about the hundreds of who could now see, the families reunited, the society that had been forced to evolve, painfully but necessarily. "No," he said finally, "I don't regret giving you sight. I regret the pain it caused, but the alternative was keeping you in darkness forever. That would have been worse." Lyra looked at the stars, her eyes clear and bright behind her visor. "Thank you," she said softly, "for believing I deserved to choose, for being human enough to help even when it was dangerous, for showing my people that compassion matters more than tradition." "That's what we do," said. "Humans, I mean, we see problems and we try to fix them. We see suffering and we try to end it. We reach out, we help, even when it's complicated." "Especially when it's complicated," Lyra added. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching ships come and go, watching two species learn to understand each other. The war between faith and truth hadn't ended with a winner. It had ended with something better, an acceptance that both could exist, that both had value, that the real wisdom was in choosing freely rather than being forced into someone else's definition of sacred. Somewhere on, a blind child was making a choice, to see or not to see. Either way, it was their choice. And that choice, more than any technology or theology, was the real gift, the gift of freedom, the gift of agency, the gift of being trusted to decide your own path. That was humanity's real contribution. Not the visor, not the science, but the simple, radical idea that people deserved the right to choose their own destiny, even when that choice challenged ancient traditions. And as watched the stars, he thought that maybe, just maybe, that was what being human really meant. Not being perfect, not having all the answers, but trying anyway, reaching out anyway, helping anyway. Even when it sparked a war, even when it hurt, even when the right thing was complicated and messy and hard. Especially then. That was the human way. And looking at Lyra beside him, seeing the wonder in her eyes as she watched the universe she'd been for 16 years, knew he'd make the same choice again. Every single time.